Good morning, I'm Tom Owen. I'm Information Architect for Open Energy. We have three speakers in the webinar today. We have Tolu Oladumeji from SSE, talking about reducing friction data sharing, Katja Kolma from Open Energy itself, to talk to you about our work so far, and then Danai Marshall from BEIS. Before we get going though, let's a quick recap of what Open Energy is. The next slide, please. Icebreaker One's mission is to empower decision makers to mandate, measure and act upon data flows that enable net zero, making data work harder to deliver net zero, and our projects are aimed at leveraging the power of data infrastructure to enable the transition to a net zero economy. Open Energy specifically aims to revolutionise the way data energy is shared in the UK and create an energy data ecosystem that works for everyone. Today you'll hear from the team about some of the things we've been up to and how you can get involved in shaping the future of open energy. New live service that will enable you to search for, share, access data easily and securely. And we also have two speakers from the energy industry. Open Energy is a project by and for the industry, so that input is particularly important. There will be a Q&A at the end, so please post questions into the chat and we'll talk about how you can get involved. However, before we start, can we have the first poll, please? You can tell us a bit about yourselves and your interests in this webinar. So that's interesting. So majority of organizations have something to do with the drive to net zero as a core part. Intriguing. Okay, can we hand over to our first speaker, please?
Thank you, Tom. Hello, everyone. So my name is Tolu, and I work with SSE as the data governance and strategy lead. And I'll just go through what our experience is with reducing friction in data sharing. Okay. So, currently in SSE, we are sharing data, both internally and externally. But one of the big challenges we have is each business unit, so to say, or team or department tend to share data the way they feel is best to, and they kind of try to improve on that process. And that's left us to have kind of siloed ways of sharing data. So we decided we wanted to align our processes. So how are we sharing data? See how we can join up the silos and also document all the activities we're doing. So if you're sharing data, there is a good history on that data sharing, and anyone who picks it up could have that information. So we are delivering a process which we call the data triage process, and it's really just looking at how we are receiving data into SSE. What route is this data request coming into, and are we directing the data request to the right teams to deal with that data request as quickly as possible? And we're looking at how we are validating those requests and how we are assessing the data before we share it. So the key areas we're looking at is looking at the security impact of sharing that data, making sure there's no national security impact when we share that data. We're looking at our legal and regulatory impact, commercial impact, consumer and privacy impact. And also we are looking at how we are discovering that data, which is a challenge in a few organizations, just like SSE as well. So in order to discover that data quickly and be able to share, we are now looking at cataloging our data. So we are focusing on cataloging our key data, looking at the data definitions, building up a glossary of data, classifying that data, and identifying our data owners and data stewards. So we've got the stewards identified to do the work once we receive that request. And very importantly, we're looking at our data quality. So we're building those business rules and enriching the data with metadata. And when you have that, you can discover that data and share it more confidently. And we're looking at how we're reviewing and approving those data requests that comes into SSE, and ultimately, how are we sharing this data? So what means are we sharing it with? So we do get ad hoc requests coming into SSE, individuals, organizations asking for data, but we also want to be proactive to share that data. So we've assessed that data and we can serve it and publish it via a portal. Something else we are doing as well is working with external organizations. So we're working with external network companies. We're working with the ENA, which is the Energy Network Association, where we work with other gas or electric companies. We're working with, collaborating with Icebreaker One. And also an initiative we started now is collaborating with the DNOs, where we can come together and build a business glossary and also have a common language across the DNOs and build a data quality, a bank of business rules, looking at the minimum quality we want this data to be. So when we're sharing it across, we know there's a minimum data quality requirement, and also looking at how we can serve this data and publish it via a portal and make it available to individuals that need this data. So this is what we're doing in SSE at the moment, and trying to work within our business and also working across the board and collaborating with other network organizations as well.
Thank you very much, Tolu. That's great. It's really interesting to see what the industry itself is doing and how that aligns with our activities in Icebreaker One. If there are any questions, then please post them in the chat and we will try to cover them in the QA section at the end. In the meantime, can I please have the second poll while we hand over to our next speaker, Katja? So these are the obstacles for energy data consumption. Clear standards and infrastructure appear to be major concerns and lack of collaboration. So this is good because these are all things that hopefully we're expecting to be able to address within the Icebreaker One framework within Open Energy. Can we close the poll, please? Our next speaker is Katja Kuhlmann. She's a data scientist within Open Energy, and she's going to present now. So hand over to Katja.
Thanks, Tom, and hello, everyone. Yeah, so my name is Katja, and I'm a developer at Open Energy. And I wanted to talk briefly about Open Energy itself, what it is, and also what it means for data providers in particular. So Open Energy is a non-profit initiative to deliver part of our national energy data infrastructure that would enable discovering, accessing, and using data at scale. And here we're talking both about open and shared data. So Open Energy builds on learnings from open banking that addresses sector-wide data sharing in the financial sector. And altogether, really, what we're trying to do is connect a decentralized, and that's really important, decentralized ecosystem of data providers and data consumers who may want to use this data for different purposes, such as analytics or building new applications. So in phase 3 of this project, in which we are now, we're focusing on the local authority retrofit use case, where a hypothetical user would be someone working in a local authority, let's say in a planning team, trying to deploy low carbon technologies. So you can imagine that if, for example, if they needed to plan for the capacity of electric vehicles, they would need access to quite a diverse set of data sets in order to support the decision. So, for example, they would need to understand capacity of the local grid, flexibility markets, and also they would need to understand what's already been deployed in the local area. So, in order to support these users, we the components that we're building well, include, but are not limited to, the energy data search, which basically aids data discovery, and a governance platform, which essentially enables organizations to trust each other and make it trust each other by making sure that the data that organizations provide are seen only by those organizations that are authorized to see it. And more practically, it also enables people to simply pre-register and then have automatic access to data sets that may require conditional access. So altogether, energy and governance platform, I believe, could address some of the pain points experienced by potential data providers. And here's how. So let me just demo a prototype of data search. And also I would like to demonstrate data governance in action. So here you can see our prototype. So one of the concerns I can imagine some of the data providers may have is whether the data will be discoverable by relevant users. So this can be achieved through a set of varied filters. So here you can see you can find data sets through by filtering by organizations, groups you belong to, tags, and even a license that is associated with your data set. But also some of the information that you want your data to be searched by can be conveyed in a metadata file that will be required together with your data sets. But also, more importantly, perhaps some organizations may have concerns around their own internal data processes and ecosystems that may not always be consistent. And that shouldn't stop them from sharing data on Open Energy, because as you can see, we support a very diverse set of data formats, ranging from very standard ones like CSV and Excel files through less common ones, but also it's simply possible to share a URL to an API endpoint that through which you want to share your data. And finally, just to show the data governance in action, I want to show, for example, if I was looking for low carbon technology data sets, excuse my internet, I would be offered with three options, like 2 websites in a CSV file. And just note that I'm not logged into the system, so I'm like any user with no special data access rights. So if I wanted to access this particular CSV file, I'll be informed that this is a shared data set and not publicly accessible. So again, this is really a way how we would make sure that data is shared with organizations that are authorized to see it. On a more general point, I believe that Open Energy can support data providers in many other ways. So for example, it could help improve their data quality. So again, just by reviewing your data sets and maybe building metadata around it, you may also assess the standards that you're using. Also, Open Energy could help meet regulatory or compliance obligations to achieve net zero. So for example, meeting ESG reporting obligations. And finally, it will help engage with stakeholders in the energy supply chain, or simply enhance the organization's profile and visibility of your services. So this is how I think Open Energy could support data providers. Okay, and that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kasia. So, do we have Danai Marshall?
Claudia, while Danny sorts her mic, perhaps you could give a little intro for us.
Yep, definitely. Well, I suppose firstly, my name is Claudia Gavard. I work in the energy data team with Danny in Bayes. So what we've been doing for a really long time is we've had our heads down. We've been trying to develop our strategy, which we'll be publishing soon in late spring. But essentially what we're really interested in with Open Energy is making sure that everything that we are doing will be able, all of the data that we're collecting and making sure that it's high quality data will be available and accessible to all of the people that can do all of this brilliant work with it. So that's sort of how I see all of this work fitting together. So it started off with the Energy Data Task Force report, which was developed by Energy Systems Catapult, and they came up with a few recommendations which we've been carrying forward, and you'll be able to see how the work that we've done has been developed in our strategy towards spring, but also that we know that we need to keep up momentum. And so I presume quite a lot of you have been on at the launch event for the second task force, that will be thinking about more the governance implications of how what creating this digital infrastructure and everything that we need to be wary of and proactive in developing. So I'm going to pause there and see if Danny has come back onto the line.
I think perhaps if we're waiting, why don't we go through some of the questions that we're seeing in the chat to Tolu. One from Ed Evans. How do you choose the data sets to be prepared for sharing?
Okay, so the first thing we've decided to do is we do know the some data requests we get quite frequently. So we are going to focus on that, making sure we can make that publicly available. Then we're looking at our key data, which will be a discussion with the data owners of, because we've grouped our data into different data domains. So identify the data that is important, that we should share, and we would assess that with the identified subject matter experts we've already also identified. So that's how we're working through it. And we know it's a huge amount of data. Before we cover our key data, we don't know how many months that would take us, but that's our way of working through it.
Thank you. As a second question from James Mulliner, I think this is particularly relevant to us, which is again, are you sharing data via APIs at all, and if so, to what extent?
At the moment, I don't think we are, but we've got a working group looking at that, because that is what we want to do at the end of the day. So we've got that data triage process I talked about, and the last bit of the project, the process is the data sharing, and it's a piece of work that we've got a group of people looking at how we're going to share data with API. That is ultimately what we want to do. But at the moment, it isn't set up yet. But yeah, it's in the pipeline.
Okay, great. And this is, of course, something that we hope to be able to help with Open Energy, is helping data providers publishing data through APIs. We in fact have some sample code, some guidelines, and we're working on our operational guidelines in that area. We have our call to action. So this is our call to join us as a beta tester. If you wish to get in touch with us for any other reasons, here's the address, but also to say that we have recently won the Energy Data Visibility Project. If you would like to get involved in this, then you can email us. However, we also have, from the EDVP group themselves, we have a survey, a joining survey which I will post in the chat. So you should be able to go there if you're interested specifically in EDVP.
I really just wanted to give some background to our work and some of the next steps for our work for everybody on the call. I think everyone should know by now what the Energy Data Task Force is. We are now also publishing very soon an energy digitalization strategy, which will show the progress we've made against the task force recommendations, as well as set out new actions for the future to enhance the digitalization efforts in the industry and in government and Ofgem and Innovate UK. We form a partnership with them called Modernising Energy Digitalisation. And through this partnership, we really pull together to coordinate efforts around policy, regulation, and innovation, which we think are the sort of the three main things to drive industry forward. And so this strategy will be publishing later this spring. It coincides also with the Smart Systems and Flexibility Plan, which we consider sort of sister documents. Data access is definitely a very big part of our strategy, and the Modernising Energy Data Access and Energy Data Visibility projects feature quite heavily within the strategy, and we are very, very much supportive and working alongside Icebreaker One and their partners with this project and other projects. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Tony. So we have another question about our use case. The extent to which an LA needs to understand DNO options depends strongly on the planning horizon and more. Is this fleshed out a bit more anywhere? I think that's probably a question to us in Icebreaker. Zoe, do we know about the use? You comment on the use case?
I think we are working on various documents at the moment. So the best answer I would give, if you're not already on our review track, we are sharing certain documentation. So things are a bit in flux because we are in the middle of the project at the moment. The best thing is to join our review track, where we send you documents that you can review, and some of these aspects are in discussion at the moment. So what I'll do is I'll pop a link to that in the chat in just a moment.
Thank you. There's a quick question, which is easier to answer, thankfully, from Paul Meadowcroft. What identity and authorization infrastructure is being considered? The Open Energy Governance Service incorporates an authorization and identity management system based on the FAPI specification, financial grade API. That's being provided by our partners Radium. So yes, it's OpenAuth to OpenID Connect with FAPI extensions. I have a message for your question for Kasia as well. What do data providers have to do in order to make their data sets discoverable on the data search? Kasia.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, so briefly, basically, there will be some actions for data providers. Some of them are more admin related, and some are more tech related. So in terms of admin work, they would basically need to contact an Icebreaker One in order to get onboarded onto our service directory, where we can set up access levels for the data users that will be accessing the data sets. But from the tech point of view, they will need to create and publish a metadata file listing well, some of the key information about where the data set sits, any information around the data set and its description. But I think more crucially, data providers will need to go through a simple exercise of securing these data sets to comply with the financial grade API standards that you mentioned. So yeah, even though it may sound a bit scary, we already released a Python library that I believe Tom Owen already shared the link to. I can share it again. That takes away most of the headache associated with this task. So yeah, but these would be two main actions really.
Thank you, Kasia. Thank you very much for attending. Please do get in touch with us. Thank you very much. Thank you to all our speakers.